All right. Well, we meet today on settled indigenous land, which is the traditional territory of the Chinookan peoples of the Wasco, Wishrim, Warm Springs, and Grand Ronde tribes. Let us honor this land and its traditional native stewards, past, present, and future, and strive today to embody a commitment to cultural equity, reconciliation, ecological conservation, and sustainability. In the spirit of this, I hereby call this meeting to order at 4:05 p.m. Before we get going, the staff has informed me that they'd like to remove agenda item 10. As is not applicable to the board meeting. Is there a motion to approve removing agenda item 10?
I'll make that motion.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, chair votes aye. Any opposed? All right, agenda item number 10 has been removed. Tia, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes, we have Greg Pack, Chair.
Here.
Megan Ramey, Vice Chair.
Here.
Daryl Roberts, Secretary.
Almost here.
Yeah. Megan Larrabee.
Here.
Letty Moretti.
Here.
Laura Dunn.
Here.
And Tamara Taylor.
Here.
All right, it's all yours, Greg.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Tia. Appreciate that. Now we need approval of the February 15th meeting minutes. It's in your board packet. Are there any changes that the board members would like to make? By that silence, I will think there's not. Can somebody make a motion to approve and accept those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve February minutes.
Thank you, Letty. Got a second? Thank you. Any further discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, the chair votes aye. The minutes have been accepted. We're going to move on to item number 4. Do we have any public in the room or online?
You have two, you have Abigail, who is from the city of Hood River, and then you have Megan, who's the city councilor, Megan Saunders.
Okay. Beyond the presentations, do you wish to make any public comment? Because if you do, I got to read all this other stuff. All right. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, the City of Hood River Urban Renewal District presentation. Abigail Elder, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I ask Amy to bring up the PowerPoint, and I'm going to first turn to Councilor Saunders, who came perfect time. Thank you so much for joining us to just give an overview of the project that we're talking about and kind of why it's important.
Yes, let me get my head on. But yeah, so we're talking about urban renewal district on the west side, which the council has really been discussing as kind of a three-legged stool, three-pronged. So it would be upgrading the transportation in the area, working on housing, especially affordable housing, and then increasing parkland in the west side area. So all of which is, of course, to make it both a place where people who are already living have better amenities than the existing, but also knowing that's where our growth is occurring. We obviously continue to grow, and we're going to continue to grow. How do you design that growth in the best way to build a really vibrant and livable community that has the transportation that you need to have connected areas and interconnected areas? I'm hoping a lot of that does wrap in with stuff Kat's doing now, where you're going to have the folks you need to have a vibrant public transit system with enough density, and also have roads that connect in the ways that make sense for routes to work. But also that, yeah, you've got the public amenities and you've got housing that works for all the different income levels.
Cool. Thank you.
Just before we move forward, can you guys see the proposed west side renewal? Okay, perfect.
Great.
That's always my
Oh,
worry.
thank you. And I realize I have on the bottom there, it says Elaine Howard. She is our consultant. I don't have her with today, but if you have technical and difficult questions, I will write them down, and Elaine and I will be happy to respond. So Amy's going to run the slideshow for me. Thank you for that. So we'll go to the next slide. I thought I'd just start with an overview of what is urban renewal, because even if you're a policy wonk, it's a little strange, but we have a lot of urban renewal here in Hood River. And then talk about the concept that we talk about when we talk about a West Side district, what that might look like and some of the options, and then kind of what those next steps are. So we're really early in this process. City Council decided last winter to hire a consultant to do a feasibility study. So we've finished the feasibility study. We're now starting a regular plan, the real plan. And that's kind of why we want to have the check-in with all of our partner districts at this moment as we finished feasibility and as we start the next piece. So next slide. And my apologies to anyone who can probably teach a master class in urban renewal, and especially to Commissioner Moretti, who will see this exact same presentation next week. So you can catch me on my tour as we go. But generally, urban renewal, because of measures 45, 47, and 50 in Oregon, that's Oregon history, taxes really increase at 3% a year. It's very, very predictable. And so this is the what you normally see. If you can go to the next slide. What urban renewal does is we take what would have been that 3% growth, we freeze the rate, and then that piece, that sliver there, is the difference, that growth that we then capture and we reinvest back into that district. So what this means is that the tax rate freezes for all of the districts, including the city, and then that difference is what we're skimming that off the top to reinvest.
Skimming it off to where?
To invest in the-
Otherwise go where?
It would otherwise go to all of those districts. So a piece of it goes to CAT, a piece of it goes
I
to
see.
the city,
So
to
you're
the
skimming
county,
it off
to
so
invest
it's not
in the,
distributed. Okay.
Yep.
And it
Yeah,
just
we-
goes to this one.
yeah, we say that it's, that we forego that piece. So you continue to have the tax revenue you've always had, but then the increase that you would have expected gets pulled out. We reinvest that back into the district area, and we talk a little bit about what those boundaries might look like. And that helps us create growth that otherwise wouldn't occur. So that's what this blue curve is, right? If the gray was what it would have been 3% each year, that blue slice is accelerated growth based on the fact that we invest in that area.
Not like financial investment.
It would be like infrastructure investment. Like if we build a road and now developers are able to build in that area, now there's
Okay.
increased property taxes. So then, after a period of time, a district generally can be between like 10 and 30 years. When the district retires or sunsets, then that green slice, right, that growth is now returned. And so you'll receive, like once that growth is there, you see the difference is much higher than if the 3% had just gone along predictably. That's the theory anyway. So then that becomes permanent revenue for you. So I have here, and it's a little hard to see, but there are currently 3 urban renewal districts in the city of Hood River. Bonus points for anybody who can identify them. So the one on the top is Port, Waterfront, the Waterfront District. That district started in the early 2000s. It has been so successful that it will sunset in fiscal year 24-25. And that increase, and I have another slide for this, now we'll return to the tax rolls. The middle one there is downtown. We call that Columbia Cascade Urban Renewal District. That started in the 80s, I believe. It no longer collects. It has some dollars still to spend, but the properties are back on the tax rolls. So we're no longer collecting money. That is how we will be paying for a street light at Second and Oak. So we'll start that after Labor Day this year. So it's a $1 million project that will be paid for by urban renewal. And the long skinny one is it's the Heights. I knew Megan would know. So 12th and 13th. In fact, on April 24th, council will be looking at options for ways to move traffic and accommodate pedestrians and bikes better in that area. So I ask everybody, roundabouts or streetlights? So we can talk about that later. That district is 96 acres, and I think it started about 10 years ago. So it's that sounds about right. That's why I go about a decade ago. That district is, will still continue for quite some time. Great, next slide. So just a few things that urban renewal has funded in our community. Of course, the left there is Waterfront Park, the city's owned park. That one in the middle there, I don't know if anybody, I didn't live in Hood River, so I know this, but that is a pipe that there was a stormwater pipe that collapsed on the waterfront. This is a $6 million project that we're working on. And so having those funds helped ameliorate this emergency. The next slide, anybody know my favorite place in all of town? It's the wastewater treatment plant. Good job. The city has spent millions to control the smell and do other upgrades there as part of urban renewal. Which means that then that didn't have to be taxpayer or ratepayers, right? You know, we think the only way that we pay for our sewer is through our sewer bills. Urban renewal was able to invest in some of that. And then the ones on the bottom are all pieces of the Columbia Cascade urban renewal district. So I think that's industrial. That is State Street with the retaining wall. It's crazy to think that like industrial was it looks like it was gravel or mud.
Is that Wasco?
I thought
That's.
it's further west or further east. I was thinking it's like at the Union Building.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think. I mean, you are more of an expert in town than I am, but
Oh, I know where, okay.
yeah. So now we can go through town and look at these things.
This is where our parking. Columbia is.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
parking, yeah,
Yes.
it's down below Double Mountain.
Yes, yep, exactly right.
That's Columbia.
Yeah. So these are all
Wasn't
things that
long ago.
have happened through urban renewal. Next slide. And when we talk about West Side, I want to say it will look nothing like this one, the waterfront, but this is a good example of what happens with urban renewal. Originally, the tax base there was about $12 million. Through the investments of the city and the port through urban renewal, that has increased by 74 million, so more than $85 million worth of assessed value in that area. This district will close in, like I said, FY 24-25. That will return about $900,000 in tax revenue back to the rolls. So I don't know what piece of that is CAT or what piece of that is the city or the county, but that is a significant piece of revenue coming back.
And that's annual revenue.
Yes, that's permanent. Yeah, I know, nothing is ever permanent, but yeah, and then continues to increase 3% a year. So that is a significant chunk of change that you went from 12 million to 85 million in 20 years. So these are all of the taxing districts inside city limits. The county, of course, is probably the biggest chunk of taxing of your property tax bill. And then down on the bottom, the last three there, community college, the education services district, and the school district represent a big chunk of your property tax bill. However, the urban renewal laws are such that the state will backfill or equalize their dollars. So they will not have to forego dollars the way other districts do.
And just in case it's a little hard to.
It is
tell,
not very.
We are this little slice, I believe.
The best slice.
Yes.
Next slide, Amy.
The Columbia Gorge Education Services District.
ESD, I
Yeah,
can tell about
please.
that. So, the ESD, serves, well, we'll talk about that.
Oh, great.
They're like, they're kind of an overarching, services district that serves several school districts within the county. Like our Columbia Gorge ESD is based out of the Dalles, but it serves all of Wasco County and Hood River County.
Okay, got it.
And so they provide early intervention, birth to 5 services in Wasco County. They provide some of the specialized like student services within the school districts for both kids.
And if I could ask a special favor, I've emailed the superintendent and I haven't heard back. So if you can, no, for the
Oh,
ESD.
that, okay.
So I wonder if maybe I have her address wrong or something. If you can pass my card along,
Sure.
that would be great. Or
I'll
just a
just-
quick email like Abigail's looking for you.
Okay. I'll email you guys together. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Next slide. Great. As Councilor Saunders said, the city has 3 plans that we wish to implement through urban renewal. And I should say, urban renewal is not a policy tool, it's a funding tool. And so rather than go to the community with a blank piece of paper and say, hey, what do you think? We say, we've already done a lot of community outreach. Let's honor and respect what we've already heard from residents, and implement the plans that we've already adopted. So the one on left is the transportation system plan. I'm sure that Kat probably had a role in creation of that. That was adopted, I think in 2011, but then amended in 2021. Does that sound right? The Hood River Affordable Housing Strategy was adopted in 2022. Councilor Saunders was very involved in that. She was the council rep. You want to say a couple words about the plan and its strategies?
Oh, yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah, so this is, I'm hoping folks are aware, council's prioritized trying to address our, kind of major housing crisis in town for many, many years. And we've done a lot of work towards that, by updating code and changing regulations, trying to limit short-term rentals, trying to buy Rand Road and that 7 acres and get affordable housing built there and a number of other things. And this affordable housing strategy was kind of the next step of, okay, we've been doing all this work. How do you make the thoughtful plan of what you'll do in the next 5 years to move those steps forward and take bigger steps as we have resources and available money to solve this problem that, as I think you're all aware, has only continued to get worse. And so if I'm gonna remember all the strategies, and I'm not so I can, a lot of it is really basically what the city can do, our place in it, because we don't build housing, is providing incentives, whether that's an easier regulatory process or actual money, or something else to get other folks to build housing of the types and affordable levels we want. So whether that is smaller, more diverse housing, affordable to folks making 6% of area median income and below, people in middle income levels, all of the above, and it is all of the above for this plan. But so one of the strategies that was identified in there is actually urban renewal as a funding tool that can focus on the west side and make sure that as the west side area of town develops, that we are building housing that is affordable to all income levels and folks that live here and work here.
Yeah, thanks.
So you
And
don't
so-
have to go too into this, but is inclusionary zoning on it?
No, I think we looked at that and it was not something that was gonna happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah, this is a fairly short-term goal. And then the third one, if I think about, gosh, we've got roads and now we have homes. I think often parks are what really create that community and knit people together. So this is the multi-jurisdictional parks, recreation and open space plan. The Parks District was the lead, but the city, the port, the school district, the county, all participated in that. So if you go to the next slide, talk a little bit about what some sample projects might be. And these are very much samples for the purposes of our feasibility study. In transportation system plan, if I think about the west side, exit 62 is ODOT calls that a failed intersection. It needs to be redone in some way. The city will have some responsibility in that. Mostly because the cars back up onto the interstate, right? They can't easily get off and then come up. As well as I think you probably all know, when Country Club was closed and Mount Adams was created, right? Because it was too close to the interstate. There's more work there. Widening Cascade Avenue between Mount Adams and Rand Road. One of the things I think about a lot is that the city or the state has plans to build the Columbia Historic Highway with cyclists and pedestrians and others coming through. Cascade is not a particularly bike-friendly road. So how can we widen Cascade in a way that it allows for multimodal transportation?
Oops, sorry.
And then other things, affordable housing, as Councilor Saunders said, the city has a project at 780 Rand Road where they've got 7 acres with the goal of probably about 100 to 130 units of low income housing. We don't know really what this might look like, but we've added in here some placeholders of acquiring land and incentivizing a couple more rentals. And then council really wants to also prioritize owner occupied housing, right? That we should, how can we incentivize that people can actually buy homes in this area? And then the third one, again, the parks plan has some really specific pieces, some trails that people will use both for transportation and for recreation, and then some neighborhood parks. So as I mentioned, we've done the feasibility study. This was the back of the envelope, like, would this pencil out? How would this look? Now we're working on what's on the right hand, the tax increment funding plan. This is the official plan where we will need to take to the state, test all of our assumptions. Because our assumption is that part of this will include area that will be someday incorporated into the city, but is not now. We will need county approval. We don't need approval from any other taxing district, just the county, because it includes unincorporated. Great. So with my short list, actually, that's a longer list than what I showed you, but we anticipate about $87 million for the projects we've identified. We go to the next one. Then this is a slide where my expert always explains it, so I'll try my best. But TIF is tax increment funding. Remember that 3% gap that or slice that'd be taking off the top. We could probably collect about 186 million. We're looking at probably, so I said about $87 million in project costs. We're looking at probably capacity, and that should be 2023 dollars, of about 103 million over 25 years. So that's one of the assumptions, is like, how long would this take? If it took 25 years, we think we could do that with about $103 million. So I have to tell you, I started my career as a librarian. I was a librarian for 20 years, where I talk about like 25 cents a day overdues.
Yeah.
So to be like casually like 103 million is so crazy to me. Next slide. Well, this doesn't show up very well. I'm sorry about that. But I will also say this is very much a potential as well. And that's what the district might look like, how big it might be. The maximum would be 445 acres. My recommendation to council will actually probably be a little bit smaller than that. Mostly just to, you can have a maximum in your whole city, and I'll probably recommend that we save some in case something else came up. But you can see we're trying to capture a good chunk of Cascade. That's what the long skinny piece is on the right.
Is this a new urban renewal district?
This would be brand new, yeah,
Okay, this is
for the west side.
next one, the
Right,
future one.
yeah,
Okay.
so we have
So not
three.
those three, okay. got it.
Yep, and actually I should say, Waterfront will retire or sunset in the next couple of years. The downtown one is already sunsetted. And so Heights would be the only one that would remain.
Okay.
So in a couple of years from now, we'd have the Heights and this one.
So we also need to do one just to increase funds. the same.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it
mean, like
allows
a
for funding
fundraiser.
of those, yeah. I mean, the roundabout at Mount Adams and Cascade is probably a $10 million project.
Yeah.
Like, this provides the big dollars to do that all at once. Where if we try to wait until just through our system development charges and stuff, it'll take a really long time. So that's really the goal, is to jumpstart some of that. Here
Can I ask
yes,
a
please.
more general question about how this works?
Yeah.
before we Get into the details. So I think it was skimming off that 3%.
Mhm.
Reduces the revenue in the short term
Mhm.
to the districts that are
That's right.
forgoing that, right? But I take it that because of the added investment, and the increase in the tax base because of that,
Right.
that we probably end up seeing a return
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, it's like we
Increase.
invested our dollars, right? It's like our
Right,
401k and the stock market does what it does, and then later. Yeah. when
We
when it
don't
comes back up.
necessarily miss that increase in revenue.
Right. Yeah, it's
or-
deferred for sure, you know,
Okay.
and it could be 25 years. But it is, it definitely comes back to you in spades.
And it's only just a chunk, because you're still getting revenue from all the other.
Yes, from the rest of the
urban
city.
renewal districts.
Yeah. Yeah, so in the memo, and I'm so sorry I didn't send this to you earlier, there is an estimate of what that could look like for each district, so that's where you can look at the numbers. One thing I think in council's intention with this is to really start the west side about the same time that Waterfront is closing. 'Cause remember I said $900,000 worth of tax revenue will be generated by Waterfront that is currently contained for urban renewal. So that coming online at the same time we're freezing the west side, we hope will balance folks out. And I've asked our consultant for a bigger analysis of that piece.
And just to clarify what we're
Yeah.
seeing here on the memo,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like by let's just say 2035,
Mm-hmm.
might be seeing a reduction of 39,000. Is that what I'm seeing?
Let's see, where are you? Thank you. Everything's starting with Hood River, so. Right, so if you said by 2035, right, yep, so at the end of this, in 25 years, you have a $1.2 million is what you would have
Received.
that you would have foregone.
And so to put that in context for everybody, so we receive about $225,000 in property tax, or 250 between there
Mhm.
a year. So that would
good
mean
to
that
know.
we're losing, or we'd be under
250,000
200,000.
For
But-
25 years,
but-
or for, no,
But
she's not saying that.
No, so like right now on a yearly basis, we receive property taxes in the amount of about between $225,000 and $250,000 a year.
In the whole county.
No, for us specifically.
But to the
So-
county, I mean,
Right.
for your whole
Yes.
territory.
We
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that
yeah.
From the whole
Yeah.
county, not
Yes.
just this district.
Right.
Correct, yeah. But, so that reduces what we get, correct?
by these
Well, it
amounts.
wouldn't, no, it wouldn't reduce. You would continue to get that. That's the
Yeah.
frozen base. What
Okay,
you wouldn't get is that increase,
okay.
you know, the
Except
3%.
that- So what I'm trying to
You
guess
get
at,
that 3% from everywhere outside of. this
Yes,
urban
that
renewal
continues.
district.
And plus, when the waterfront comes back on, we
Mhm.
get.
Whatever those
Additional
dollars are,
ones,
yeah.
but, and then also, if the reinvestment
Mhm.
increases the tax base.
Mhm.
Then even though we're not getting the extra 3%, we're getting the 97% of a bigger pie,
Right, when it comes back, yeah. So it's deferred, right? Like, so when it sunsets,
Eventually, yes, we get
Yes.
that 3%, but I'm saying we get into, so that last 3% of the, so then, but the part that we do get, minus that 3%, is going to be bigger, right? We
No.
can assume after 10 years or
Right.
however long and not 25 years, or however long that.
right,
the-
however
the
long the district is, this goes with
in
the
a
assumption of
shorter
25
time
years.
than, yeah, I don't mean in the, only after 25 years, but that if you start to see returns on those
Mm-hmm.
investments, because there's more investment there, then that would grow the tax base in the town.
They'd
and we
get
can expect-
reinvested back into the district.
Oh.
So the district would take that 3% increase and then whatever is being developed goes
Oh.
back into the district for the life of the district.
Okay, so we don't get a piece of that, okay.
Until the district
Until it's
closes.
done.
Yeah.
But, and then we get it.
Yeah,
Like.
I know.
If there is a huge cost expansion,
Uh-huh.
or say, you say 25 years,
Yeah.
but as the growth goes on,
Mhm.
if it maxes out
Yep.
in 15 years, does that lower that 25-year
Yeah.
time frame?
Yes, that's exactly right. So there's
okay.
what they call maximum indebtedness. So I think waterfront, like I said, I think it started in 2008. I think it probably was gonna run till, it's less than 20 years old, but because the growth was so fast,
Okay.
it has already reached what we call maximum indebtedness and it's closing way earlier.
Okay.
So,
And as a new person to
No,
this area, and
brilliant
seeing the
question.
growth and everything, I can see that happen easily.
Yeah, and that was part of our assumptions, what do we
Okay.
think was gonna happen with particular parcels? The great thing about being a small town is we can kind of have a guess about particular, we think this development will happen soon, this development might take some time, so that's kind of built into this feasibility study too.
and just because we're getting a lot of great conversation
know.
here,
We
I
take all
want to
day.
make sure that
Oh, yeah,
our
thank you.
Zoom people also get a chance to ask some questions. Do you have? any-
Yeah, I guess my only question is the immediate funding. So you have that permanent revenue stream. Is that done through bonds? Then do you go out and get bonds to do initial work based off of
We-
what that potential 3% diversion is?
It could be. I mean, that's a later question for council. If you wanna front load so I'd say we've had a couple different models. The waterfront, I think the port fronted a lot of the money that happened and then they were paid back. So a lot of that happened fast. The heights, I think the city has waited for the funding to come through and is now starting projects. So you can either choose to do it slow or fast.
It
Okay.
is, I mean, the actual loan mechanism, whether it's the port gives a loan to the urban renewal
Yeah.
district, or you go to a bank or it's bonds, there is generally the idea is that, yeah, you're kind of borrowing against the future. Money that you're gonna be getting in, so you're gonna have the money to quote unquote pay the mortgage. But you can put that investment in, probably not like the first year we do this, but
Right.
once we're confident we're gonna have enough money to pay back a loan, that you would invest in building that piece of infrastructure or whatever it is that's gonna spur the development and increase your revenue. Should reinvest, and then eventually increase everyone's revenue in the county.
Thank you. Very sophisticated financial questions. I appreciate this. Great. Well, then-
And Daryl, oh, I'm sorry.
No, please.
All right. Daryl, do you have any questions too?
Okay, well then I'll just mention here, like I said, about the potential boundary. We're going here to say, gosh, 13th and Cascade, that like whole length of Cascade, and just the red line there represents the city boundary. You can see, first of all, how wacky the city boundary is. You probably travel in and out of the city all the time, didn't realize it. And then how much of that would be in the county, and so that's why the county needs to be a approver of this.
All right.
I'm almost done. So one thing we really want to be aware of is, like I said, urban renewal, not a policy tool, just a funding tool, but sometimes across the country, it has been used in ways that have displaced people or have placed burdens on marginalized groups. So as we work through this, we have really, we want to keep equity centered in our commitment here. And so every time we're talking about things, we talk about whose benefits, who would be harmed, and how can we mitigate harm. Every change that we possibly make is going to have an impact. And I can't promise that like nothing will be painful, but we want to see if there are ways to mitigate that. One way this comes up is some of our naturally occurring affordable housing, right? Some of the most affordable areas in town are off of Cascade. In this area, if we build up this area, make it super attractive for developers, folks who live there might wind up not being able to afford there anymore. So the city is not generally in the housing business, but this is a question we have to think about as we're moving forward with the urban renewal district. So definitely don't have answers, but we're working through this.
And I do want to highlight too, for some of the
Yeah.
projects that you discussed for the urban renewal district, it would benefit CAT as well, and it actually goes hand in hand with our transit master plan. So there's the affordable housing on Rand. We are working with them to make sure that transit is involved. It would also help do road improvements that make it easier for us to serve that area. So there are a lot of very tie-ins, and it would actually and helps us with our transit master plan and to really to improve our services for the community.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah. And I'd say that's true for a lot of our districts, right? We think about like the school district has property that might be easier to unlock if we had, you know, better roads to that space. And of course, we're talking about actually acquiring land that could be used for parks, which moves our park goals forward. So it's really, it's the city running it, but it is definitely the whole community. And then the last thing I'll say is I said we had those 3 plans, and I said, gosh, we want to honor the comments that we heard previously. We're also doing an audit of those 3 plans to see, are any community members that we missed? Are there questions that we didn't get asked? And so really wanting to be very inclusive in our process.
How does somebody get involved with that?
With the
Audit.
with the audit?
Yeah.
Well, I can give you Jackie's name. Jackie's our, she's gone through with a lens, just that kind of equity lens of like, what did we do? Who did we talk to? Ask the parks for that. And then we have consultants from Eco Northwest who are equity kind of consultants or experts who have been helping with that.
Okay.
In the memo, I think the last page is a quick summary of those plans and the participation. Great.
So with the land that we need to be obtained,
Yeah,
is that state, city,
land for parks or housing or,
the development? Yes.
yeah.
This land, for the whole project,
Mhm.
I mean, how is it going to affect people?
It's
Is
a
it-
big mix of everything. You think about how
Okay.
many different property owners there are, and some of them we put in a road near their property, they might choose to develop.
Okay.
The city might choose to buy some land, like that would be a great place for a park, or that's where we want to put housing.
Is it mostly personal land ownership, or is it, okay?
Yeah, it's mostly, individuals and residents and
It's not
LLCs.
like a county or state?
I don't think
owned
so.
land? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
It's, yeah, so there's what, 17 acres of school district property, but that's
Mhm.
otherwise predominantly in private ownership. And the urban renewal, it wouldn't change anything of like the city would still have to buy property for
Yeah.
a park or for housing on the open market like anyone else. We don't.
yeah, so if you know any
We're not eminent
bargain
domain or
housing
anything.
or
Yeah.
bargain land, let me know. I don't have the money yet, but I'm gonna start shopping, particularly if it's flat. I would really love to have some flat land.
I mean, this is part of the kind of the hope of how urban renewal increases investment is that, you're not forcing anyone to develop, but if there's folks on the west side who would like to do something with their land, and there's currently, and there's quite a bit of land on the west side with this, and there's no real road access to it.
Mhm.
And if they were to develop now, they'd have to pay for and build the road, they'd have to pay into the $10 million
The roundabout.
roundabout, on Cascade, and it makes it so that no one can develop, even if they want to, and so this is kind of freeing up that space of, okay, if in the free market system, someone's gonna do X, this makes it easier to do it, and hopefully directs them to do it in a way that is beneficial to the city and the community to meet all of our goals.
Exactly right. Thanks. So where we are, I said the feasibility study, when I wrote this, I said almost completed. It has been completed. Council reviewed that, accepted that plan. The study, that memo that you received, and it has now directed us to work on the official tax increment funding plan. Our goal is to have that done by the end of September. And our reason for that is then we freeze property rates at last year at 2022 levels. So we can start capturing that 3% right away. And then the district itself would begin on January 1st, 2024. I think we'll have, when I think about public engagement, like I said, we have the 3 plans, they had public engagement, so we want to really use that. But there will be, I think we've just put up a video on our website about what is urban renewal. And then we'll be doing some pieces about like, are these the projects that look good, and, you know, more kind of information sharing coming up. So this is really the launch. You get to see kind of the preview of it.
So I assume there's more projects than,
Yes.
okay. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm
this is like a sample of,
it's like
although exit 62 could take every penny.
I know, like Rand Road and what's the other big one I didn't see? Oh, Belmont?
Yes, well, that's outside of this district.
Oh, it
Oh.
is.
Oh, Belmont, I'm sorry.
Which
I
part
think
of- I
you,
guess what part of Belmont?
I guess I was
So
thinking Belmont
the
13.
new extension that would go straight through.
Now I can't, the math wasn't
'Cause
good.
I
I know the maps are good enough, so we'll take.
Which So Belmont, that's,
I thought I had-
so right near the Avalon neighborhood, it would just go straight through.
Okay.
Because that's critical to the
Instead of
housing.
curving around
Yeah.
past the grade
Right.
school, West Side School.
Yeah,
I'll take a look.
Oh, like it wouldn't go around West Side, it would just go through that one.
well, there would be a different road, but yeah, it would. be going straight.
I'm not sure, would Avalon be in there, because it's already built out?
I don't know.
It's the section west of Belmont.
So
And I know
sorry, I
that
just
was
I want to keep us on track here.
Yes,
Abigail,
please.
so-
Yeah, I could talk about this forever, so you gotta shut me down.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's a lot of interest there, but Abigail, is there anything else, we have questions for her directly?
No, I would say I've left my card on the table. Amy knows how to get a hold of me, and I'd say, the next piece, as we work on that final plan, we will either, I'll come back if you let me, or, I will share with Amy the final plan, and then there'll be a comment period for all the taxing districts that's required by law. So be looking for
I think-
your feedback then.
I think you'd be welcome back. Obviously, there's a lot of interest. in
thank
that.
you.
I think it'd be great to have you back.
That's great.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Abigail. Appreciate it.
So much for both of you guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Sorry for being late.
No.
No, you were right on time.
And you're welcome to stay if you would like to.
We'll stay for a
join
little
the-
while.
The fun.
That was very.
It's a lot to take.
Abigail, you're also welcome to leave if you want.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Don't feel the pressure.
Okay.
All right. If we can move on to agenda item number 6, Tia, the financial report.
Yes, sorry.
And let the record state that Daryl joined the meeting as well, too. I know he wasn't there. For
Yeah,
roll call.
I'm here. I'm just on mute because there's a lot of background noise where I'm at.
Okay.
All right, so in your packets, I've included the financial report for February. And I'm just going to go through and highlight a few things. And then take some questions and address some questions that I had received from Daryl and any additional that you guys might have. So cash available at the end of February was $1 million. That's about 458,000 less than this time last year. right now that can be attributed to the purchase of our new buses. But that will level out once the reimbursements are reflected in the financial report next month. AR at the end of February was at $22,000. Of the invoices, there was only one that had reached the over 30-day bucket, but that has since been received. This far, we have received 160,000 in stiff formula funds, as well as a $15,000 reimbursement associated with the grant, the planning grant, which helps with expenses related to the TMP. All AP invoices were paid before the end of the month. Total revenue through the end of February was 1.7 million, which is 334,000 more than the earnings this time last year, but 218,000 less than the amount budgeted this far. The variance is due to the timing of the grants, but that will again reflect as those start coming in. Fuel cost year to date is 193,000, which is right on track with budget. We're $1,000 over, but that is a lot better than we had been trending, so it's looking good. Cost of goods operations, preventative maintenance expenses, which includes tires, shop supplies, bus repairs. At the end of February was 113,000, which is 30,000 more than the about budgeted, and 17,000 more than fiscal year 22 at this time. We are working on the supplemental budget, but that could also, depending on what expenses we have through the end of the year, could level out as well. Communications, so dispatch and GPS software were 18,000 through the end of February, which is $6,000 under budget. Driver expenses were $11,000, which is 5,000 more than last year. That is due to purchasing the uniforms. We're still $2,000 under budget. Advertising is at $40,000, which leaves a positive variance of $40,000 through the end of the year. The grant match funds, that is where we were reflecting McKed when they were operating the Dallas service for us. But since we have taken that over, that is going to stay pretty stagnant around $20,000. Gross profit at the end of February was 1.3 million, which is 228,000 more than fiscal year 22 at this time, but 207,000 less than the amount budgeted. That is reflective of the accrual basis change to modified cash. We're starting to see that the more we get into that transition. Administrative expenses through the end of February were 129,000, which is 35,000 less than last year and 46,000 less than the amount budgeted. Total personnel expenses through February were 990,000, which is 172,000 more than last year, but 159,000 less than the amount budgeted. And that is evenly split between operations and administrative staff. Capital outlay, we purchased the 2 new buses, so those are reflective in this month. The total capital expenses through the end of February were 301,000, resulting in a negative variance of 236,000. But that will again even out once we receive our reimbursement. Net income at the close of February ended with a negative variance of 96,000, which is 134,000 more than last year at this time. Again, that is reflective of the modified cash change. And does anybody have any questions this far?
Like the modified accounting?
Yes,
The-
so,
Yeah,
We did
go
like
ahead.
the first of the month, or
yeah, so since we changed, you guys approved the accounting basis change. Last year it was accrual, So we had accrued for that amount, and of course, this year we are not, so that's why there's that difference.
On your, and I'm just curious, on your advertising expense with that 40K,
Mhm.
do you have a project planned for that 40K to use that up before the end of the year?
Yes, so part of that will be used for some of the outreach expenses for the transit master plan. But also there are a couple of things that we plan to do to end the year. Whether that's for PR, for doing some press releases, and also some potential outreach tools as well.
Okay. Then, where the administrative expense, there again, where you're so far under budget, is
Mhm.
there a plan to utilize those funds before the end of the year? Or is this cost savings because of the overall budget?
So that included several projects that we were working on through the year. The budget was evenly split through the year, which next year, we're gonna make it a little more reflective of our actual plans. So we do have a lot of plans towards the end of the year, so you'll see that lesson throughout that.
Okay. And then my last question is, with the personnel being less than budgeted, is that, are there going to be any changes before the end of the year? I mean, is that something, because that's a lot of money to be a variance, and that's where, are we doing this to overall budget wise? Is there something? Because I see you all are doing a lot with a limited amount of people.
Mhm.
I'm gonna be right honest with you.
Yeah.
I see that,
Mhm.
and I'm concerned with projects like advertising takes a full-on person to get that done.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, thank you for asking that question. It's always
Okay.
a good question to ask. So yes, we are under on the personnel. But go ahead.
So again, that's where the evenly split throughout the year didn't really benefit us because we had downtime, in the winter, which allowed for that overage where we start to pick up and I don't mean winter, like the fall, when September, October, November, that's where we really fell less than normal.
Okay.
And then it started to pick up with the Gorge to Mountain, and then we'll be taking on the Dog Mountain and increasing service level. So again, the even split between through the end of the year didn't help. That will come up, and I project it to be right on budget when we end the year.
Yeah, thank you, because that makes sense.
And I think
Thank you.
the other thing to remember too, especially for personnel costs. I mean, yes, there's the seasonal, right? The
So,
seasonal
yeah, okay.
that we
Yeah.
have. We have kind of changed, I think this year, we've had some changes in the structure in the office. So some personnel that maybe was more operations has gone into the administrative side. But I mean, this is the total personnel, but a lot of that has to do with the seasonal. And as we've kind of progressed this year, we have made some structural changes, which kind of change that number as well. And figuring out what we really need, and to your point, where we need it, I think we're still kind of figuring that out. And we're going to take that into consideration when we're doing our budget for this next year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions up here?
All right. Thank you, Tia. Appreciate it. Amy, do you want to take us to agenda item number 7, resolution and action items?
I would love to. So our first one is the approval of the FTA low or no emission bus program. So this is something I added a memo to your board meeting materials. But I also emailed you all about this to make sure there were no concerns, as this was a grant that I had to submit to ODOT this past week. But because of the price value, which is about $7.5 million, I did want to make sure that you guys had the opportunity to discuss in a public meeting, as well as to get your formal approval of that application. So the FTA low or no emissions, we put in an application for 2 40-foot vehicles. So that would be replacing the Columbia Gorge Express vehicles. 2 35-foot vehicles, which would be around Hood River, City of Hood River, as well as 1 van and 1 cutaway. So the van would be for dial a ride, and the cutaway would be for Upper Valley services. So these,
What's a cutaway?
so a cutaway is kind of like the purple buses that you'll see a lot, that they're kind of they're a truck chassis with a passenger component on it. Is there a better way to describe that, Jeff?
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I can picture that.
Yeah. There are really, really purple buses that we have. Okay. Are there any questions on that? The expected match is just over 1 mil. I should also add that that does include modifications to our facility. And making sure that we can do those modifications if that was the right way to go, or what are our different options. Right now, our facility, as you know, doesn't really accommodate those bigger vehicles. So we're figuring out the best way to do that, or if we need to look for new land to do that.
So 2 of those will be Columbia Gorge Express electric vehicles. What's the range on those? How?
So I believe it's 250 miles for the Proterras, which are the ones that we're looking at. So it would allow to go there and back, no problem. And then we would have the fast charger station, which would allow to charge once they get back the appropriate amount
So
of
it
time.
wouldn't slow down or limit the number of trips we.
Correct. We also have 2 gas vehicles that we should be able to go out for bid this summer. So we will have those gas vehicles as backup, and then we also have those electric vehicles.
And we
But
have the charging station here already, right?
no, so that's part of the
Part of
grant
the
as
grant,
well,
okay.
is the grant charger,
Okay.
or sorry, is the it's called a
Fast
pantograph, I believe. Is the fancy term for it.
So Amy, we need to vote
Yeah.
on these one by one? Is that what you want to do?
So a full vote for just the FTA low or no emission 5239B and C application, get a yes or I'm looking for an approval.
Okay, on 7A, although I need a motion, I guess, first to approve that.
I make a motion to approve.
I saw Letty's hand go up. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on 7A? Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
I
perfect.
have a question.
Yes.
So where's the 1 million gonna come from?
That's a great question. Thank you for reminding me of that. So what we were looking at a leasing option. So we'll actually lease the battery, or at least all the vehicles, and then we're just pay. So we would do a little bit of a down payment, and then on a yearly basis, we would pay the lease for those vehicles. And so, but because they're electric vehicles, we would also get a carbon credit. So that would actually balance out a decent amount. People who are a lot smarter than me created these analysis. But to my understanding is it would balance out a large chunk of that yearly lease cost. So it would be, so we're looking at about $100,000 a year for that lease cost for about, I think it's 10 years. And then with the carbon credit, it would actually only be, the estimated amount is about $70,000. The intent is to make sure that we can do about that $100,000 a year, which we can, which is what we've used partly of the local property, or the funds that we received the property taxes from. That's why this is all really good conversation to be having. Yeah, so that's where we get those funds from. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
And then
Yes,
I assume we'd have fuel savings there as well too, going to electric versus,
Correct, quite a bit.
Okay.
Waterfront sunsets, we get.
Great question, Daryl.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming up. Unrestricted.
When would we find out if we are awarded these?
This summer.
It's this summer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, in fact, we're not saying, yes, we're gonna do it. We're just saying, yes, we're gonna apply.
We're applying and the intent is that if we are awarded it, that we feel comfortable with it and I have your approval to sign that contract.
How soon, because I know it takes a while to get buses.
Yeah.
How soon would we see these actual buses on the road?
So we would see these buses, so the bigger buses, it could be even, I believe it was fiscal year 26.
Okay.
The cutaway in the van, I do not think that it'll be that timeline, based on what we're seeing on, vehicle delays. I am told from Proterra that the bigger buses, because they create them themselves, they are not seeing the same type of delays that we are for regular bus chassis. This all is dependent too also on contractors as well, right? Because with all the supply chain issues, those could delay that as well. And making it difficult for us to do the vehicle the facility modifications, and installing the chargers and everything as well. That goes along with that. So I think there is a fairly tight timeline. It's about a 2-year for the timeline. Of all the different modifications that would happen, and then we would get the vehicles. But based on what I'm seeing, I think I would be very surprised if, due to factors out of our control, that we are actually able to meet that timeline, based on supply chain issues. But the intent is for us to do all the different steps that we can in order to meet that deadline.
All right. Any further discussion? Thank you, Daryl, for bringing that up. Okay, all those in favor of applying?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Chair votes aye. Okay, can we move on to 7B?
Okay, yes, so, sorry, I'm getting distracted. So a vehicle purchase. So, we have 2 vehicles that, Wacom came to us about. They are used vehicles. They are newer than our current, buses that we use for Gorge to Mountain, but they are Gilligs. They are used buses. They have given us the opportunity to purchase them for $3,000 each. And we have, I would like your approval to go ahead and move forward with those purchases. These would be used for either Gorge to Mountain or other seasonal services. We have kind of made the strategic approach of, instead of buying new vehicles for some of our seasonal services, and especially the Gorge to Mountain Express, instead of buying new vehicles on those services, we use a little older, but very capable of doing those services, but we do see a lot of wear and tear on those buses because of the type of service that we're providing. So we have found it makes a lot of sense to run those older but sturdy Gillig vehicles. So we are asking for the approval to buy 2 $3,000 30-foot Gillig buses. Jeff, do you remember the year of those?
I don't know.
Okay.
Seems like an amazing value.
Yeah.
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 That's correctly.
So we have, because of the fact that we're a transit agency, we're a smaller transit agency, we do have the ability, there is, and I'm forgetting all the specific technical details about it. But bigger transportation districts, to offload some of their older vehicles, they can give them to smaller districts. And we have found it's very beneficial, and we've gotten several of our vehicles through that program.
And even if they
And
don't.
then
run,
Amy, we're gonna sell our
Yeah.
buses too, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
There's a good chance we're gonna sell 1 or 2 of them.
Okay,
Once we receive those buses and understand all the different, repairs that may need to happen to them, there is the potential for using a couple of our older buses as parts buses, and then outfitting these buses and then selling those other buses.
Jeff always says.
Okay.
So yes, the intent is to sell and generate some revenue from the older buses. We won't necessarily keep all of them.
I was just pointing out Amy pointed out the value of the parts for the $3,000 or for $3,000 is worth the bus alone.
We've actually been told by our mechanic that would be a very beneficial way to do it. Yeah. Alrighty.
So we
So-
need to bring 7B to vote.
I would make a motion in favor.
Okay,
7B.
thank you.
A
Can you
second.
get a second? Perfect. Any further discussion on purchase of the buses? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or contrary minded?
I know, I like to see.
And Daryl, just a FYI, we are, oh, sorry.
No, no, I don't think so.
The chair votes aye. Daryl, we can see where you're walking, but it's a good view of all the trucks.
Oh,
Glad you're at a
sorry.
truck stop.
Thought I had the video blocked.
Oh.
Just think about where you're at before that.
Yeah.
All right, we're on to 7C then.
Yes, and I'm sorry, Tia did have to step out for a personal
Oh.
reason. But I will do my best to describe the action that we are asking. So we're asking approval of a financial statement review to a quarterly basis. So as we discussed at last month's meeting, because of our change from an accrual to modified cash accounting basis, it sometimes makes the financial statements a little difficult to review because you're seeing this huge imbalance of revenue versus expenses. So Daryl actually made the suggestion at first and to move the overall review of the financial statements on a quarterly basis so that you can actually see the grant revenue as we have already received it. And then it'll give you a clearer picture of the district's financial statements. We will also continue though on a monthly basis, kind of calling out the big important things that you need to know. So it's not like we are just not going to talk about financials for, for 3 months. We'll still continue to bring up the highlights that you need to know.
Okay.
So we are looking for approval of that.
All right,
I'll
do we
make
have a
a
motion?
to approve 7C.
Perfect. Second,
Second.
awesome. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, we even got a thumbs up from Laura. All right. And any opposed? All right, chair votes aye. Okay, on to 7D.
All right, wonderful. So approval of outside accountant. So we're seeking your approval of the proposal that we provided in your board meeting materials. This is the only accountant that did submit a proposal. They did have a lot of great references. They have a lot of great experience with special districts. They are quite a bit more expensive than what we paid our team accounting previously. But they do have a CPA and they, again, have just a ton of experience with special districts.
This is who you met at.
The
Yes,
SDO
yeah.
conference, yeah. Exactly.
And you made the point that we were probably underpaying.
I think we were very
compared to
lucky.
industry standard.
Yes.
Right. Mhm.
And again, I mean, our team accounting wasn't necessarily a
Okay, maybe I don't want to say it that way, but.
and our team accounting wasn't a CPA.
Okay.
So this is a CPA, so that there is a
Okay.
big difference.
Okay.
And I think with their experience, they will probably be able to do things quite quickly.
Okay.
I'll make the
Uh,
motion to approve 7D.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, chair votes aye. Not like we had much of a choice there. I'm glad we finally have an accountant back on
No,
board and looking
yay.
forward to their performance. Okay,
And
we on
we-
the operations report?
Yes, we are. So I do want to introduce to everybody, this gentleman over here. This is Jeff Accioli. He is our operations assistant manager. And Jeff, do you want to do a 30-second brief intro on yourself? I'm totally putting you on the spot here.
You are, that's okay. Yeah, I just am here in the board meeting to kind of just check it out and see, for lack of a better word, what the vibe is and how the conversations are going, and just getting my feet wet here. Yeah, I think
You've been here for a while.
I've been here for a while. Yeah, I started here as a driver, then field supervisor, and then ops assistant, and now I'm in the board meeting room. So
So Jeff has
We
a lot of great.
we usually make the ops manager cry during these meetings. I hope this doesn't bother you.
it's good. It's good for me to cry every now and then.
Okay, all right,
It's a
good,
nice
good.
release, right?
Yes. And I will be doing a brief version of the operations manager report today, and then I'll have Jeff kind of back me up or give some additional information as needed since he's in the weeds here. Okay, so first of all, I do want to do an apology here with our recent change. There were some goals that we were getting that I don't know how to retrieve them. So there are some blanks here. However, I do take this as an opportunity to really look at our goals and our safety goals and really understand, are these really telling us the information we need to appropriately manage our business? And I think the answer there is there's some opportunity to evaluate these, and I'm going to be doing this with Jeff to make sure that we really have something that helps us understand where we are and what we need to do to improve operations. So safety score was 98. We had 0 crashes. There were 12 harsh events reported. And I do not know the actual harsh events out of that amount, those 12. The drive time was 1,446 hours. We were over the speed limit. We increased that percentage a bit from January, which is something that we'll be working on with drivers. And our miles driven was reduced just a tad from January.
Can you segment percent over the speed limit between?
Maybe not-
Highway. Yeah, I know. For me, it's more important. They're both important for the city. The city is like the one that.
And percent means percent of the time that we are over the speed limit,
Yeah.
not the percentage amount that we were over.
I believe it's the time, but I
Yeah.
will clarify that.
It might be
Yeah,
nice to know if we
Yeah.
were like only 1% over, but we were like, 70% over it. Versus, just a couple miles over, right?
Yeah.
Right, I mean,
so more details on what the percentages mean, and you're more concerned about the location being the city. 'Cause
yeah.
we can actually just look at, yeah, like we can actually take snippets of
And
people on
maybe-
the routes when they are speeding and see exactly where they, like, give you more detail of where these
And maybe
bigger
like
speeding incidents are happening.
percent of time. I'm just throwing this out there, but what if it was percent of the time more than 5% over the speed limit? Something like that, so that we don't need to know if they were 1 or 2 miles per hour.
For a second. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's set up to be exactly what you
Okay.
said. It's
Okay.
I think we have it set to like 5 miles and over, 5 miles per hour over for a certain, like, I think
Amount of
60
time, okay.
seconds or something like
Okay,
that.
okay.
I can get those exact numbers though.
And I would say it's a little confusing to be reporting on the harsh events reported. I understand why you need to keep that information, but as far as what we're making available to the public. I would, again, I'd like to throw out there, could we just report how many harsh events were there, real harsh events? And we could keep internal data that says what, where we had these false reports, basically.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Jeff and I were mulling over is whether we should be reporting more our incidents reported by drivers as well, and the community and customers. So if there's some sort of issue that happens, maybe with a customer and a driver or on route or something like that, we have all of that data. We keep that information.
But I think usually if it's gonna be a harsh event that's important or relevant, we're gonna hear about it as an incident, and so
Yeah.
it's gonna get documented, and so I think. Yeah, just to back up what Amy's saying, I think going through our incident reports and pulling the ones that are like related to. A harsh event, like somebody slammed on their brakes because someone pulled out in front of them, or somebody hit a mailbox or whatever, like those, giving like real life stories.
Wondering is if we can just take this line out in our what's released to the public, that we don't have this line that says.
Like-
Harsh events reported and
Yeah.
include false indicators.
Well, I
Yeah,
thought we
so-
had it in there just to be transparent, because if you pulled reports right from the system, it'd have all those in there. And then if we're not showing it, it looks like we're hiding something. So what I recall was because they were moving the boxes around, we had all these harsh reports. And if we compared it, if we pulled it out of the system and didn't report it here, we're kind of hiding data.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
and-
believe that's why they're shown that way.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, caused by removals, yeah.
but I think the problem is more of the understanding when the harsh events are actual. So that's why we were coming up with the incidents in general, discussing that. Rather than necessarily when a box is being removed or,
Yeah.
potentially, yeah.
Basically a false,
Yeah. But that is something we will discuss more, and we'll come with proposed goals at next board meeting. All right, so then also on-time performance. Again, I'm gonna apologize for this, and just need to understand better of where that information was coming from. But for our dollar ride on-time performance, we were at 87%, which is trending just about average based on our previous months. So other things to know, is fuel used, and I'm looking at this again and I'm a little concerned about the data, so I think we're gonna review that. With fresh eyes, I'm seeing a couple things that don't make a lot of sense to me, so we'll review that and I'll send out an updated kind of report on that. However, for gas, we used about the total fuel cost is about the same, or a little lower than January. And then customer complaints, we had one, and that was just due to kind of a customer driver incident of just there was kind of back and forth of discussion, and we have reached out to that driver and kind of coached them appropriately. Any questions?
How is the dog rides doing? Anything?
I have
To
not
report?
heard anything. Jeff, have you?
What do you like actual dogs riding on the bus?
Yeah.
Well, since
Yeah,
we
just-
did our policy.
Yeah,
Sorry. Like, I think that's good.
we've had no issues or reports of anything since the last incident before the last board meeting. Yeah, it sounds like, no one said anything, so
Okay.
Are you
Guess it's
seeing
good.
an increase in the canine passengers?
I don't have a
Oh, yes,
ridership tally for dogs.
You haven't heard about?
No,
it?
I don't,
We're not
yeah,
tracking, maybe, but.
we could add it as a tab.
Okay.
When I-
Sir.
When I have been on the bus, I've heard just a couple of conversations, of
Okay.
just like, oh yeah, that's no longer needed, so it seems like it's
Appreciate it.
yes.
Yeah, I haven't
All right.
seen my dog on here.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
thank you, Jeff, for attending and being there for resources on the
Yeah.
operations report.
So the one other thing I want to add for ridership, sorry about that, our ridership makes me very happy. We have seen some increases from January. So specifically on the Hood River City route and the Columbia Gorge Express. They're doing quite well. So those are the big ones that I wanted to call out.
We're shuffling the columns.
Yeah,
That makes such a difference.
hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
All right, I believe that, so the only other things on the operations report is the Dog Mountain Expanded Columbia Gorge Express Service.
I don't need.
Oh, an employee of the month, I'm so sorry, thank you so much. Zach McFarland is our employee of the month. He has had some, I think, difficult, Gorge to Mountain Express runs based on weather. And as always, he deals with it, with a smile. And when you ask him how his run was, even if you know it was very difficult, he says, yeah, it was okay.
He was stuck on 84 for 2 PM to 8 PM, and that ice storm that they got with like 3 or 4 passengers, and just
Oh,
would have been really frustrating, but he was like super positive, kept the passengers, comfy, and was letting, yeah, I don't know. I was surprised. I would have been pretty irritated in that scenario. And he was just like, yeah, we're here, can't do anything about it.
And we got actually several, on different panels on Facebook, there was several mentions of him and how great he did on that experience. So if you see him, I definitely think he gets a pat on the back. Okay, awesome. So Dog Mountain, again, this is for informational purposes only. The seasonal service will start April 29th. And that'll be weekends only from until June 19th. And the goal is to reduce congestion and safety issues at the Dog Mountain Trailhead. And it'll be about every 30 minutes that it'll operate. ODOT has also approached us about leftover Falls to Locks funds that they have from last year. And about starting the expanded Columbia Gorge Express service before July 1st which is when we are expecting to see the statewide transportation improvement funds. Hopefully that we're expecting to be awarded to us. I've asked them to, if we can start that starting April 29th, that way we're not doing so many different seasonal changes. Because otherwise it would be Dog Mountain, April 29th, Memorial Day, expanded Columbia Gorge service, and then July 1st, changes with our new funding structures. And that sounds like a lot. So I'm hoping to line them up a little bit more. And so I'll keep you guys in the loop on that.
Hey, Amy,
questions?
I apologize. I apologize. I have to go mobile right now. Just to be able, I have another board thing I'm headed to. Megan, do you mind formally running the meeting from here on out? I'll be listening, but I'll respond if needed.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thank you, guys.
All right. So actually we'll go ahead and on to 9.
We are now moving on to executive director's report. Amy, go ahead.
Me again. So just a couple of quick updates for you. So Multnomah Falls and I-84 corridor, I am looking for general approval from you all to move forward with the direction that I am going. The past couple of summers, we have staffed the Multnomah Falls transportation ambassadors at Multnomah Falls, who actually do the permit checks, if you remember, at exit 31. So this year we are not doing that. We are not staffing it ourselves. However, the discussion is to contract with the Forest Service. So we would actually contract the service out to another contractor, and the Forest Service would contract with us to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So there's just gonna be a permit system, I hear, for just the parking lot this year.
Correct. So the corridor will not have a permit like it did last year. There are lots of different reasons. I think the biggest reason is money to staff it. It was very difficult. There was also lots of public concerns over that.
There might be impact on our ridership then. Because that was the big carrot to take the bus.
So I think there is definitely that potential. I think there is still a pretty big carrot to take the bus, especially with the partnerships that we have created with ODOT and Travel Oregon. Our service is much more advertised than it was in the past for using that instead of Multnomah Falls. But I think there's definitely 100% that possibility. I think there's also definite the possibility where people will do that and then maybe it's too busy or something, and then they'll try to go to exit 31, and that might cause some other congestion issues there, and they won't have the permit, which they need to have in order to use exit 31. So I think there's definitely some potential contentions and conflict. But I think it really boiled down to money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive service the corridor checkpoint specifically was very expensive and hard to manage.
Imagine though.
Yeah.
Historic Columbia River Advisory Committee is not happy about this. But I didn't listen to their last board meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So. Why do we check permits?
so that's a great question. It was something that was decided by my predecessor, because of making it easier and safer for us to access exit 31. So exit 31 is where we stop for our Multnomah Falls stop. And what was happening with all the congestion without permits, it was making us incredibly difficult and unsafe for us to service that stop. So we had used CARES funds in order to staff the permitters there to make it safer for us to access. And what it did is it reduced the issues that we had accessing this spot, but also having some permit checkers there, making sure that people didn't park in our bus zone also helped. So it had additional benefits to it. So it's definitely a program that we should continue to assist. I think it's a little bit out of our scope to pay for permit checkers ourselves, but I want to help the partnership with the Forest Service and ODOT. And this is a way that we can do that. All right. Any questions on that? And if there's looking for just general approval to
Oh,
kind of move
sorry,
forward in that
that's
direction.
me. I'm entertaining a motion. Or just a general approval.
Yeah, I mean, if
Yes,
we could
okay,
get a
sorry.
motion, that would be great.
I'll second that motion.
Well, we need one. I'm
We need
I'm
someone to-
considered the chair now, so we need a motion.
I'll
I'll
make the motion.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. So Laura was the first motion and Letty was the second.
All in favor, or any general discussion? No, all in favor? Aye. Chair votes aye.
Awesome. And then just the last piece, the board member elections update. So there are 4 people that I know of that are interested. One of them is, Tamara. Then there's Gisela. Yes. And then also Elazar Reyes, who is was a past board member. And he is interested again. He told me he will be submitting his information. And
Those
then
are due tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have gotten confirmation that it's either in the works or has happened. I just honestly wasn't able to.
It is,
Okay.
because right before the board meeting, he wasn't in,
Okay.
He had not submitted yet.
it wasn't posted. in.
Do you mind texting him?
Sure.
And there is.
I had a question about Elizar. I know we contract with him for mechanic services, and that is a huge resource for us here in the gorge. And when I just wanted to bring that up because I know if he's a board member, he wouldn't be able to offer those services to us, correct?
He actually only contracts with us for cleaning, which is on a quarterly basis. And so the only thing that, because he brought up that concern to me,
Yeah.
he would just need to recuse himself if there are any discussions about contract or anything that might be a conflict of interest. Just it's very similar to how Greg handles those situations with Meadows.
Yeah, thank you.
And then there is someone else that contacted me today too, who was interested as well. So, John Cochran. I actually don't know who he is. I've never met him before.
There's 3 people that have, I just pulled up the thing that have turned in what they're filing. What are the names? Gisela, and Tricia Gooch.
Oh, okay. That's
Do you
actually,
know who that
I
is?
do not know who that is.
I do know who she is. She's
Okay.
a friend of mine. She asked about this. She lived here in like at least 20 years. She actually, was friends with my husband before I met him. And so I've known.
Okay. So it looks like
She
there,
works in like the financial district.
The managing, like money management type of thing.
So it looks like we'll have several people potentially, more people than spots, so that's great. All right,
So how does that work? Well, we didn't have to, were you on the same ballot as me? No, Letty was, I can't remember. Yeah, and I didn't have to.
Whenever I ran, it was.
It was us, yeah.
I think there was nobody, there
Yeah.
were 4 spots in front
Yeah,
of.
yeah, right.
I just, someone was like, "Can I get a sign?" And I was like, I don't.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. Yeah.
so people might have to do some campaigning and then we'll just have to see what happens.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I know people will ask me.
Yeah.
I always do. Who do I vote for?
Well, and I do plan on, I've already talked to some of the local people downtown. Sunday mornings, it's really good, because a lot of times, or the people I've talked to have all been owners of the business. And just ask some general questions and saying, by the way, I'm kind of holding off until after it's closed to do it, but yeah, I'm very interested, so I do plan on campaigning.
Another great way might be Facebook as well, posting, I believe that is essentially an appropriate use of like Hood River happenings and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Elazar is, he filled out an application and he's, just needs to drop it off and pay the $10, yeah.
perfect, awesome, great to hear it. Any other questions on those, any of those two items? Letters to the editor help as well.
Jeff, do you mind sharing Elazar's phone number with me?
Sure.
So closing that, so we're now on to
Discussion items.
discussion items. Anybody have anything to talk about?
I had a question.
Yes.
On our last meeting, we had some items that we pulled off of the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious, are they coming back on? Have they been?
So the child policy one, that will, I'm hoping for the next meeting. There's a couple of pieces that I wanted to, because the whole point of changing that policy, or the age of children who can ride without a patient or a parent, is to align with other providers. And there's still some additional work that needs to be done in order to do that.
Okay.
All right.
Anybody else? I just,
Did,
we don't have to go into, oh, Daryl, you go ahead.
Amy,
Yes.
did you guys already discuss what happened with Ty before I joined the meeting, or was that not on the agenda?
That's no longer on the agenda. I am happy to discuss with you on an individual basis.
Oh, okay.
But may I ask if we have hiring plans?
Yes, so the job description will go up tomorrow morning, and I apologize, I said that yesterday. But it's finalized, we just need to place it on Indeed as well as our website. And I am told that we do have a couple of, or we have some internal interest as well. Yeah. Great.
Anybody else? Okay, on to 12 upcoming events. Me or you? What is this?
There's not descriptions on your cheat sheet, but there are budget committee meetings coming up. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting them off the top of my head. But they were in May and beginning of June. And I will send that out to everybody with the specific dates, and several of you will be attending as part of the budget committee.
Daryl and myself.
It's Gerald and you, yes, and Greg, but Greg won't be there, so, yeah.
Okay, I guess,
But sorry, just
Yes.
to be clear on that, anybody who would like to be part of the budget or be at the budget committee meetings are more than welcome to do so.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn our meeting at 5:34. 34. Okay.
I second. 5:34. Discussion?
No,
All in favor?
5:30 bus.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'll find it out.
All
in
right.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you,
Chair votes aye.
everybody.
We're good.
Thank you.